And since then, we've designed over 100 websites and brands. And today is all about web copywriting and using and sharing some of the UI UX knowledge so that you can start producing better web copy that is actually engaging for your users. We will start with the following premise, and this is a big and important one. People are lazy by default, and it's not a judgment. It's what decades of UI UX research is built on. The whole field of UI UX exists to understand how people actually behave, not how we wish they'd behave, and actually design around it. We cannot change people, but what we can change is what we do to influence how people behave on your website. I mean, this is basically what user research is, finding the patterns and designing for them instead of against them. I've got a couple of examples from our outside world. Sports drinks, they always have a wider bottle opening. And as I was preparing this presentation, I was actually drinking from one of these bottles. And I was thinking, oh, why is it wider than others? But actually, it turns out it is all based on research. People drink more and faster when the mouth of the bottle is wider. So the packaging is actually designed for the behavior, not the other way around. Then there's crisps. Did you know that there's a lot of R&D happening around how loud the crunch of a crisp is? It happens because there are studies that show that people perceive the taste as better when the sound is stronger. It's called sonic seasoning, and there are actual studies around this. Then we've got IKEA instructions. No words anywhere in any language, just the illustrations. And it turns out that there are fewer errors when instructions come in illustrations rather than written text. So the text wasn't actually helping, it was getting in the way. Then we've got ketchup bottles. They used to be standing up and made from glass. It was annoying because ketchup is a non-Newtonian fluid that is viscous and doesn't flow easily. Until Heinz redesigned the bottle, so all you do is open and squeeze. Well, web design and web copy follows the same principle. And therefore, it's important to understand the research and build a set of guiding principles that we should always follow if we want our websites to be effective. This whole presentation is based on the most cited web usability study ever conducted by Nielsen Norman Group. The most authoritative source when it comes to UI UX research. So keep this in mind also for whenever you write any kind of content that goes onto the web or on platforms where people are busy. This study has been replicated multiple times over 25 plus years, and the data stayed consistent even if web design and websites evolved a lot. What is super important to remember is this: the vast majority of users scan. They don't read a whole page, they don't read the contents of a web page word by word. They will see headings, first sentences, bold text, numbers, links, and a number that can feel slightly depressing sometimes. A user spends between 7 to 15 seconds on average on a website page before they decide to leave the website altogether or move to another page. So the question is, how do you use those 7 to 15 seconds to captivate the user to actually spend more time on your page, to convince them that your content is relevant and is answering their issue? So let's look at this slide. And now, let's look at this one. Which one stands out as the most memorable? It's this one, right? That's the thing with web copy. The hierarchy of information is very different from long-form essay-style copy. And it also does require a bit of lateral thinking to be able to change the angle of the story, but also manage to keep its essence and make it interesting and understandable at a quick glance. And while the stat that changes everything, maybe a good heading to draw you in on a kind of long form piece of content, it is actually the stat that answers the question and therefore is more important and more relevant to the person reading it. The value of grade to web copy is significant, and there is a lot of data backing this up. There's a 58% increase in usability on a website when the copy is concise, as opposed to a blog or detailed copy. There's a 47% increase in usability for copy that is easy to scan. There's a 27% increase in usability if the copy is non-promotional. And the one that matters the most, 124% increase in usability of a website if the copy is all three, so concise, scannable, and also objective. Please remember, scannable is a very, very big keyword today. This is one of the most important things to keep in mind when writing web copy. And making copy scannable quite often means things beyond just short sentences that are to the point. And we're going to go through all of this. Let's look at how people scan pages. So typically, website users will read the first line, and then they tend to scan down on the left edge because their brain got trained that on the right side there are often ads, and therefore have learned to kind of ignore the right side. This is called the F pattern, and the F pattern is not a goal. It's what happens when a page doesn't have a clear hierarchy. The layer cake pattern is the goal. The layer cake pattern means that the users read the headings, they skip the body copy, and they are still able to get a gist of all the contents of the page and what this page is trying to communicate. So layer cake means that your headings are doing all the heavy lifting and users can navigate efficiently. Of course, structuring the content in little cards side by side can then feel intuitive, but it isn't, because in reality, the research also shows that users need diversity on a page. So using the same sections and just repeating them endlessly on a page, even if the copy is very short, will not actually serve the purpose. Then we've got the spotted pattern. This is where a user jumps to visual anchors, and visual anchors go beyond just images. Visual anchors include digits, bold text, links. So basically things that look different from regular body copy. And the spotted pattern is why digits and bold text matter so much. They are anchors that the eye locks onto. So we're just kind of remembering from the previous slides that we've only got 16% of users who are committed enough to actually read the entirety of your web copy and all the body copy and all the subheadings and absolutely everything there is out there. That's a very small number. So we need to cater to these 84% who don't read the text below it. And I know we are all passionate about what we are doing, and we want to be able to tell our readers, the full story of and everything we think is relevant. But we need to also accept that this is actually a hard fact, and we should instead take it as an opportunity to shift our focus to where the impact is higher: scannability, headings, digits, etc. So in this presentation, I've put together a collection of 8 rules to follow when writing web copy, all of them still based on NN's group study. So let's go. Number 1, web pages are not documents, and they should never be treated this way. A blog post is a document. It's got a beginning, it's got a middle, it's got an end. The reader enters at the top, moves through the page in order, and the writer controls the sequence of the content of the story. Web pages are completely different because website users behave differently too. Do you remember how many times you've maybe landed on a page, looked at the hero banner, then scrolled all the way down, then went back up? This is exactly why website pages need to be treated very differently from long form copy. So people don't scan from top to bottom, and they can go from bottom to the top. And if they do, the information should still make sense. So this is a very easy test for you to apply when writing copy. You know, scroll, read, kind of scan the page from top to bottom, and then do the same from bottom to the top. Does the message still come across clearly? Now, every level in the web copy hierarchy needs to deliver complete standalone meaning. So if, for example, you deleted the body text and left only the headings, only the stats, so the digits, and only the CTAs, the page should also still make sense. So this is another good exercise to test if the copy delivers the message. Because in reality, for website copy, you're not writing a flowing narrative. You're writing independent sections that coexist and that build a story. Headings aren't chapter titles. They are the entire message for the 84% who will not read the body text below it. And they are so, so important to get right. So I've already mentioned that numbers are important, but the NN Group actually conducted some studies on eye tracking, so kind of how the eye moves on a page. And basically, it turns out that numerals attract fixations even if they are embedded in text, so they don't need to be just standalone. And do you know why that is? It's because the visual shape of digits is different enough from letters to catch peripheral vision. It is literally how our brain works. So the users fixate on numerals through peripheral vision, but also because they signal to the brain that those are going to be facts, and facts are always more valuable to a person kind of looking for a solution, looking for outcomes. So facts are really what scanners want to find. Now, quick exercise, which one of these is more scannable? I would assume all of you will would reply the one on the right-hand side, not only because 150 in digits is quicker to scan, but also because the overall message is shorter and it delivers exactly the same kind of content, but it is shorter and therefore quicker to scan and actually understand the entirety of the message. We've already talked about scanning in layers. We've talked about, you know, headings being very important, but in layers can also mean that the website visitor reads a heading, then maybe a little bit of the subheading, and maybe a little bit of the first sentence, if they get there. One very, very important rule is to make sure that each of these layers does not repeat itself. Because if they just repeat the one above, you've lost the user before they reach anything useful to them. And this is happening because users are always asking one question: is there anything new here for me? The moment the answer is no, you've lost them. They will either leave the page or scroll down, move further. So, for example, a classic trap heading says, "We help you grow faster." The first sentence says, "Our services are designed to accelerate your growth." Same sentence, different words. They've read it twice and didn't really learn more by reading that second sentence. So the rule is super simple. Every level must either narrow, prove, or surprise. And basically, in this case, the heading should be the one making the claim. The first sentence delivers the evidence, the number, the specific detail, the consequence, and never the restatement. In the F pattern that we spoke about earlier, the further right a word sits, the less likely it is to be seen. And here the NN Group is very explicit. It says, start headings and subheadings with the words carrying most information. If users see only the first two words, they should still get the gist. So as you can see, this whole presentation is about narrowing down each of these principles. And we've talked about reading basically headings, and now we're actually even more focused. What are those first words that you have in a headings in a sentence so that the user gets as much of the relevant information you want to share with them. Simple test for you to apply onto your website, onto your web copy. Read the first two words in a sentence. If they still make the point, then it's right. If you need to read more, then you're already in the 16% of committed users, and they might not read more than those two words. Web copy is really about maximizing the amount of information that can be showcased to give a visitor an idea of the topic without repetition, without reading everything that's on a page. So remember the thing that we talked about a little bit earlier. You've got 7 to 15 seconds to captivate the user and convince them that your content is right and that you are the right person, the right company to solve their issues. In kind of this front loading of information, it's super important to lose anything that starts sentences with when it comes to, it's worth noting that in today's fast-paced environment, etc., it's no secret that at company X, we believe Z, as a leading provider of, we are proud to. So be concise, be to the point, think about what the user actually needs to find out in that section, and make sure you leverage those first couple of words to make your point. Also, the NN Group found that users decide whether a paragraph is relevant to them within the first few words, as I mentioned. If it doesn't land immediately, they skip the whole thing. So if you have 3 different things to say, you need 3 blocks or sections, not 3 sentences in one paragraph, 3 separate units, each one able to stand out for a scanner who never reads the others. So if we've got 3 different ideas, they should each get their entire section on the page. And that can mean, for example, 3 little cards that outline 3 different ideas, or 3 kind of sections that are one on top of the other, where you've got a heading and the actual point that you're trying to make. And also something that I see a lot and something absolutely crucial, especially if you want to make your website scannable, web paragraphs, so web copy paragraphs in any kind of section, aside from perhaps FAQs, because those sections serve a different purpose, they should never be longer than 3 sentences. Often 1 or 2 is exactly right. Not because the readers are lazy, but because and I mean, we know that they kind of are, that they don't spend a lot of time, mostly because they're busy and overloaded with a lot of information. But it's very important to keep the text short and concise, because each and every idea deserves its own moment to be found and needs visual space to breathe so that it can become scannable. So also bad practice to kind of stack copy on top of each other, not have any room to breathe, have a lot of text. That makes it very, very hard to scan. So think of it a little bit like a market stall. You don't pile all your fruits and veggies in kind of one big pile and hope that people dig through it. You have each of the fruits and the vegetables put in their own separate piles so that someone who's walking past at speed can spot exactly what they came for. Then we've got marketees speak. So the NN Group found that objective writing scored 27% higher in usability than promotional copy. And marketees is often considered by users actively irritating, quote unquote. And they claimed that they had to mentally filter out the hype to find the substance, which they felt slowed them down. So not only that, but marketees is everywhere around us. Our brains become rewired to automatically skip marketees, kind of in a similar way in which when I spoke about the F pattern and the fact that users don't really look on the right-hand side of a website because that is where people got used to having lots of ads. So there are a couple of tests that you can follow to make sure that you are not using too much marketees or at all in your web copy. So first, you have the evidence test. So instead of our cutting edge framework, you can say 125 clients who wanted our service. Then you've got the adjective test. So basically delete all adjectives. Does it still make sense? If so, better to leave it like that. And then you've got the out loud test. So read the copy that you've written out loud. Would a human actually say this in a meeting? If so, it's good. It's a good sign. If it sounds bizarre or it sounds like it doesn't feel natural, then it needs rephrasing. We're moving towards the end of the presentation, and both ideas 7 and 8 kind of relate because this is very, very, very important to think about your users when writing web copy. But let's first talk about the distinction between maker-centric and user-centric language. So maker-centric copy is written from inside the company looking out. So for example, using phrases like our framework, our proven methodology, we are proud to offer. And this is the side that's the easiest to communicate when we talk about what we do, because this is the kind of language that we talk on a day-to-day basis inside the organization, right? But this is also the kind of language that most of the time will not draw your potential persona in. User-centric copy, however, is written from the reader's perspective, looking in. So what does it mean for me? What problem does it solve? What will I get? And additionally, this is something that I definitely often see in, I've seen a lot of in a lot of the website projects I've worked on. The NN research also found that lists of features and internal terminology does not attract readers because the language is not relatable. So turning features into benefits instead of listing features, actually talking about the benefits, speaking with the readers, not at them, and making sure that plain language is available so that whoever reads your website can actually understand what you're talking about. So also as part of this NN Group study, they asked an IT professional reading a super technical service description, how they found that description. And they said, I understand it, but I prefer not to think on those levels. So it doesn't mean that your users don't understand what you're talking about, but it means that they would prefer to read something that is straightforward and easy to understand and said plainly. As I said, the 8th point is kind of connected and an extension of the 7th. Because this is something that I see so often in web copy. And the NN Group are also saying that writing good copy starts with understanding who will consume the information, why they need it, and what they will do with it next. And this kind of copy is written with that user, thinking what the user is feeling, what they're struggling with, and what they're looking for. So these are kind of 3 core questions that you need to keep at the forefront of your mind when you write web copy. And that's why ultimately we always have marketing personas as part of every brand strategy project, because we want to understand who they are, what their pains are, and what their gains are, and how we can actually resolve their pains. Let's imagine this. We have a client whose persona are directors and above, so very busy people, who usually tend to come to this company's website simply to validate the company. So a director and above is likely super busy, and they probably care about exactly 3 things. Do you understand my problem? Have you solved it before? How fast can I find all of this out? That's it. They will not end up browsing through 45 different website pages. So we need to make sure that the pages that we are building for that persona capture all the relevant information in a scannable and succinct way, because they are less likely to read everything and get lost in a lot of information or a lot of layers of pages and subpages and so on. So the primary job of website copy goes beyond writing beautiful copy. It's about empathizing with the reader's time. And it's about empathizing with their needs and wants, and support them to getting to a decision as fast as possible. So the NN Group also have a little empathy map that they use in some of their research. And basically this is a collaborative visualization that helps define certain aspects of every type of user on a website. So you end up having a shared understanding of the user's needs, and you can actively help in decision making. So this is, in addition to the typical marketing persona template that becomes a guiding principle, and you can use it to better empathize with the user. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, as this information is widely available on the internet, and I'm realizing we're reaching the end of the webinar. I've got a little slide that is very easy to, I put it together so that people can screenshot it and save it somewhere so that you've got all the points as a summary. So just a quick run through all the various items. Web pages are not documents. Each block works alone. The heading is the message. Digits, not words. 180 in digits stops the eye. 180 spelled out does not. Repetition is a killer. Every level of hierarchy must add new information. And if there's repetition, it should not be there. Less is more. Front load everything. First 2 words carry meaning, or they carry nothing. 1 idea per block. If you've got 3 things to say, use 3 blocks, maximum 3 sentences per paragraph. Marketees doesn't work. Replace claims with evidence. Delete every adjective and make sure that that doesn't change the meaning, and then you're good. User-centric, not maker-centric copy. So write for the reader's problem, not for the company's pride. And finally, use empathy. If you're talking to a CEO with 14 tabs open, think about what they need and what they will find deterring. And with that in mind, thank you very much.